Good evening and welcome back. It's Monday night in the heart of New York. My name is Magdalena Baczewska.
And I'm Eduard Zilberkant, and we are at the International Keyboard Institute and Festival, the 17th season. And this is very exciting. It's a third night, and we are having a recital, an interesting recital by Quynh Nguyen and Geoffrey Burleson, who will be doing a varied recital program for us today.
Certainly, both of them are faculty members here at Hunter College, where for the first time the International Keyboard Institute is being held here at the Kaye Playhouse. It will be very lovely to hear them debuting in a way on that stage. I must say I have had the pleasure of hearing Quynh Nguyen many times before. She is a former colleague of mine, a classmate in the class of Jerome Rose, and her interpretations of romantic music, especially the Schumann Kreisleriana, have been just painfully beautiful, and I very much look forward to her starting the program with the Chopin 24 Preludes, which are of course a tribute to the great master Johann Sebastian Bach and his well-tempered clavier. We do know that noise that you're hearing, by the way, is a sound check for David Dubal's pre-concert lecture, but while we're hearing that in the background, I want to tell you Chopin, who was a very sought-after and expensive piano teacher, did require all of his students to learn the well-tempered clavier preludes and fugues.
So we're sort of being interrupted by a lot of great piano playing as we're hearing, which was going to be on the lecture. But yes, exactly. But as you were saying, that the well-tempered clavier is one of the great sets, and there are two sets of preludes and fugues that Bach wrote, and in a way, ever since Bach, there's only been a few composers who've managed to do another sets of 24 preludes like this, and we have Chopin, and then after him we only have Rachmaninoff also wrote a collection of 24 preludes, but they are not in one set. They're in two different, actually three different opuses, with the famous C-sharp minor prelude first, and then we have the opus 23 10 preludes, and then 13 preludes of opus 32. But then the crowning achievement in that sense in the 20th century will be Shostakovich's preludes and fugues, which 24. But these particular Chopin preludes are really miraculous pieces. They were written on the Isle of Majorca. David Dubal will be expounding more about each one of these pieces that are going to be played, but it's a very unique piece, and it is one of the staples of the pianist repertoire, that's for sure.
Indeed, and right after those preludes we will hear Geoffrey Burleson, who is the director of the piano studies here at Hunter College, playing the music of Saens, which is very close to his heart. He has recorded the complete piano works of Saens on 5 CDs released for the Naxos Grand Piano label. Later he will play a Persichetti piano sonata, I believe number 9, in honor of the 100th birthday of the composer. Persichetti is another composer very close to Jeff's heart. He also recorded a complete piano sonatas of Vincent Persichetti. And then after that, I'm feeling very patriotic tonight because the program opens with a Polish piece and closes also with a Polish composer of the 20th century, Witold Lutoslawski, and his famous Paganini variations for 2 pianos, which we have heard under the fingers of some of the greatest pianists such as Marta Argerich and Nelson Freire.
Exactly. And again, everybody knows the 24th Caprice, and it's been taken from Rachmaninoff for piano and orchestra and everything else, and this Lutoslawski variations are really staple. They're incredibly fiery pieces, and they are so popular at this particular work that Lutoslawski actually transcribed it for piano and orchestra. So right. There's an incredible version of that as well. But it's literally going to be like a bonbon at the end of this recital, which is quite a heavy recital for everybody. But this last piece is just going to have everybody laughing and cheering at the end, because it's a very funny rendition in many respects of what way he figures out how to do these particular variations, because everything starting from Paganini. And this is just, again, another demonstration of the kind of variety of music that is being heard during the next 2 weeks, and you will be able to hear that on these broadcasts. If you go to ikif.org/live, you will be able to hear us, so please tell your friends and relatives and anybody else who is interested and hearing incredible live performances from New York of incredible pianists. And some of the people that we will be hearing this year are coming up. First of all, tomorrow you will be featured, and I know at intermission time you and Mr. Rose will be discussing your performance.
That's right. So don't go anywhere during the intermission, because I have to prepare you for the Goldberg performance tomorrow night.
So that's very exciting. And then we have Alessio Bach, we have Geoffrey Swann, we have Victor Rosenbaum, we have Alexander Kobrin, and many other pianists that are here. And it's just really incredible what's happening during the next 2 weeks here at the International Keyboard Institute and Festival.
Sure enough. And you will be busy as well, conducting 3 piano concerti. For those of you who are just joining us today, you should know that Eduard Zilberkant is not only a renowned pianist and a pedagogue, but also a conductor leading the Fairbanks Symphony. And we will have the pleasure of seeing him conduct a newly formed orchestra, the Jägermeisters Orchestra. A Jägermeister comes from the word hunter, when of course we're in Hunter College. So this newly formed orchestra will accompany 3 pianists and 3 different piano concerti. Tell us more about
Yes, it's going to be very exciting. It's first of all, the orchestra is comprised of some of the best instrumentalists in New York. So it's really going to be a really fantastic group of instrumentalists on stage. But we have 3 incredible pianists: Massimiliano Ferrati, we have Matteo Varga, and we have Claire Huang-Si, who will be playing the Mozart. The first concerto will be the Mozart K414, the A major, and then we have the Haydn D major concerto, the famous concerto, and then the program will close with one of the great early concertos of Mozart, the number 9 K271, which is Jerome. And it's really one of the pinnacle of piano repertoire. Out of the 25 piano concertos of Mozart, this one of the earliest concertos is really one of the great virtuoso works. So to hear it live in concert is always extremely special. So it's going to be a very exciting evening of 3 piano concertos, and I think at the end there might be a special encore that might be arranged. So we'll keep everybody in suspense, and we'll see what happens.
I know nothing about that. That sounds great. I would like to extend a special welcome to representatives of 2 more countries who joined us last night for the webcast of Marc-Andre Hamelin's recital. And these are the Aussies, welcome Australia, and India. We are so happy you are all joining us, and we hope you continue to tune into www.ikif.org/live. We are almost ready for David Dubal to take over and let us in on some of the details of tonight's program. David Dubal spoke so beautifully yesterday about Franz Liszt. Of course, he could probably talk for hours, and indeed it was a little hard to stop him at this point. He is such an authority on piano music and pianists that it's really truly a pleasure to hear him speak. And honestly, I don't think anybody was ready for him to finish.
Exactly. And this is, again, something that if you are in the New York area, I would urge you all to come out live to not only hear these concerts live in person, because there's a very special atmosphere to be at a live concert, but also during the day. There are 120 pianists from all over the world, students who are here to study with all these great artists and ourselves here to who give lessons. So these master classes are open, so you can come in and get a day pass. Again, you can find out information at www.ikif.org and get the information about how to come into some of these events. And not only are you able to hear the master pianists every evening that we're presenting you, but you can also hear the young generation of what are the students doing, how are they interacting with the masters, and hear how the masters teach these incredibly talented students. All of these students had to audition under close scrutiny, so they are all of very high caliber musicians themselves. And at the same time, at the end of this festival, those that participate for the 2 weeks during the festival are also able to compete in the International Mackenzie Award competition, which is really a very special thing. And about 40 pianists usually from 120, they have to prepare an hour and 20 minutes worth of music, and they compete in 3 rounds of competition. So it's also a very exciting thing to observe. And again, if you're anywhere close by, you should literally come out and see this live.
I think it's also a very beautiful gesture to give the last word to the young pianists, to the new generation of artists, and that's what happens every year. Dorothy Mackenzie is a wonderful lady. I had a great pleasure of meeting her a while ago. She loves life, she loves music and the young musicians, and she does everything she possibly can to support them, not only financially, but also morally, to help them in that quest, because it is really a hard work. You know, it's not just tickling the ivories. For those of you who are spending days and hours in practice rooms every day, you know what we're talking about.
Exactly. It's love's labor, and basically we commit our whole lives to it, and it's a very solitary labor because you're in a room by yourself thinking about music all the time, working everything out so that when you can walk out on stage, you can give everything of yourself into these wonderful performances. And again, this is the uniqueness of this festival, which has been in existence for 17 years. And this year we are at Hunter College in Kaye Playhouse, which is absolutely magnificent concert hall. And we have wonderful instruments that are available to us. We can't go away without saying thank you to Yamaha Corporation, who gave incredible CFX, new concert grand Yamaha, and the new Busendorfer, which is on stage, which is performed. And Yamaha has also given over 50 instruments to Hunter College for this 2 weeks for the students to practice on and for the faculty to teach and everything else. So a great deal of thanks goes to the Yamaha Corporation for this type of support and everything that happens. But pianists are always, thrilled to talk about music and find out what is possible. And this is a unique opportunity at this festival where the young generation, again, as we were saying, can come in and discuss their goals, aspiration, what they want from master teachers, master pianists, because there's no other way to really explain what it is to be a concert pianist than to see it in person. And every night you get to see what a pianist's career is all about, because every night there's a different pianist appears on stage with a very different type of repertoire. And it's also telling of how much repertoire pianists do have to learn. It's absolutely incredible. And we are one of these blessed individuals, being pianists, that we have the most amount of. I think if you take all the repertoire for all the instruments and combine them, you will maybe come close to what's written for piano, because obviously pianists, we can walk out and play a concert by ourselves, but everybody else sort of would like to have us along for the ride to play with them.
That is very true. Yes, we're very lucky to be pianists. At the same time, I'm thinking of this golden phrase of Jerome Rose, the teacher, and I'm sure you will immediately know what I'm talking about. You play who you are.
Absolutely.
Mr. Rose always repeats that, and it is such a loaded expression because it never gets easier to go out there and expose all your strengths and weaknesses to the audience, which may or may not be friendly at any time. You might be jet lagged, you might be a little under the weather, and you still have to come out and show your very best. And that, as Mr. Rose himself says, it never gets easier. At the same time, you try to pretend you are invincible. You try to pretend you're somebody else. The audience will immediately smell that.
Absolutely. And basically, I think we're given a signal that David Dubal is about to be ready to do the pre-concert lecture. It's a very exciting. He's going to discuss all the repertoire that is going to be on this particular concert, from Chopin to Della Gioia to Saens, and of course Lutoslawski. So it is. It's really going to be very, very entertaining once this happens.
Have you played the Lutoslawski variations?
I have read them. I've never performed them in concert, but they are so much. Yes, they are a lot of fun. And I remember when I was in Poland that I did find the score to the piano and orchestra version. So I was very excited to see that is something that is possible to do. And I'm always looking to see if, maybe next year we can get with the Jägermeister Symphony Orchestra to do something like this. That would be very, very exciting to do.
Speaking of an ensemble piece, you are about to join Claire Huangzi, Gabriele Leporati, and the lovely Geza Luca in a performance of Bizet's Carmen arrangement.
Yes, it's Mac Weiner. This is an arrangement of a piano. It's a group called Piano Quartet, and they've arranged a lot of different things, and it is for 2 pianos, 8 hands. So it really is a lot of fun. And it's rare for us sometimes to play ensemble music. I mean, there's tremendous amount written for piano 4 hands, going back as far as Mozart and everything else. But
the logistics of it can get complicated at times.
But it is really a lot of fun to do this type of stuff. And I guess now we are getting the final call that they are ready for David Dubal. So
yes,
I think
I see David is already downstairs and gathering up all he can to share the details of the music we're about to hear tonight. Let's turn our attention to the stage.
We're vamping again. There's nobody here to do anything. So the only thing we can do is again repeat for the people. I think you are tomorrow because we'll talk with Intermission. I think Geoffrey Swan, and then Alessio Bach. So looking at Alessio, Geoffrey, Victor, Nina, we're missing Alexander Kovlin. Aldo Cohen. I mean, if you remember any of the names, you just at least the names of people who are what is the big, that's about all we can do. Is just talk about what's happening.
Do you want to talk about teaching Eduard?
Good evening. My name is Scott Gentile, and I'm the assistant to the director for the 2015 International Keyboard Institute and Festival. We look forward to this event. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. David Dubal. Mr. Dubal has been with the festival since the very beginning. He has done so many amazing things in the field that we all love so much. Mr. Dubal can be heard on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. as on WQXR as he hosts Reflections from the Keyboard, and which is also replayed on Sunday nights. Mr. Dubal is happy to be here tonight, and we are most certainly happy to have him. Without any further ado, I introduce to you Mr. David Dubal.
Good job, man, good job. Scott is a fine young man, I mean really fine. I want to say that I'm so pleased to see many people that I know, many from my evening division at Juilliard, and this is just great. Donna's here, and I call her Elizabeth, and Karen, and Peggy, and my George is there. My God, George bought my drawing of Scriabin. I love you, George. Do you have it framed? Great, great. We have a wonderful program, very different than yesterday's. It's two pianists, and they'll join together, as you know, in the famous theme that Brahms and Liszt and Paganini and so many others, actually, about 15 composers have found this pregnant tune of Paganini's very, very fetching. And this 5-minute work by Lutoslawski was and has been a staple of the two-piano literature. I must say that I adore Saens, but I want to say also that I'm very glad to know this is worldwide streaming. I know it's successful because I've gotten a lot of calls. One from my great colleague who's a very great pianist, and his name is Stanley Waldorf. You've heard him on my show, and he's listening with Teresa Sanchez. And he knew Persichetti very well, studied with him at Juilliard, and he once interviewed him when he brought him down to the University of Southern Mississippi. And Stanley was telling me today that he said to Mr. Persichetti, tell me, you know, do you think that your music will last? Or a question like that. And I said, well, what did he say? And he said, you know, I was so surprised that my question was so good that I couldn't remember a thing of what he said. And that, by the way, is the great hardship of an interviewer. It takes a long time to be able to not blank out when you are speaking to someone. You're on your way, you have a question, and all of a sudden, nothing is happening in the brain. Well, the human being, as you know, is a very, very strange animal. I want to also thank Robert Tanucci. Everyone in the world should have a Robert Tanucci in his life. He's a great archivist, and he made it possible for me to find, it took me 2 hours today, but an interview with Persichetti that I did, and I'd like you to hear it. And Robert Tanucci is, well, as I said, this man wants to put on YouTube or wherever everything I've ever done. What I thought was irretrievably lost, he has found somewhere. And it's unbelievable, man. So thank you, Robert, for saving this interview with Vincent Persichetti, who I liked very much. We're going to talk about him through the interview, so it will take 10 minutes only of this 1 hour. And I think you'll get a little bit to know this man who passed away probably 25 years ago, 20 years ago. It's his 100th birthday. And he is one of these important American composers that have disappeared from the map of music. David Diamond Sessions, Antile, Looning. I can go on and on. There's about 30 or 40 great symphonists, Menon, William Schumann. These were people that were so involved with the fact that they were going to create an American art, a great American art commensurate with the country's greatness. Well, it didn't work out that way because almost all of this music has disappeared. And they were all born within 10 years of each other. What a pity. There's a lot of work to be done. So I'm so glad that Geoffrey Burleson has recorded all of the sonatas of Persichetti. We're going to hear them in a second. I think that I'll play the guessing game with you, which is, of all these amazing works, and we're talking about thousands, how many have survived, really, that the world and America knows? The piece, one piece, that has survived. Which is it, George, you know? No. You do know. There's only one piece from American literature that has survived, the Rhapsody in Blue. You hear it on television, you hear it in Woody Allen movies, you hear it in every possible place, airports, and that is it. And he also was born at that same moment in time as Virgil Thompson. I left him out. And that is a great shame. So I'm glad we're going to rectify that tonight in honor of Persichetti. Matt, let us begin this 10 minutes. I hope you can hear this because it is probably the only extant interview with this great American composer.
This is David Dubal. My guest today, the American composer Vincent Persichetti. Few composers have had the far-reaching impact on all levels of American music that Vincent Persichetti has. I think Walter Simmons pinpoints Mr. Persichetti's appeal. Following in the lineage of Mozart and Mendelssohn, Persichetti seems to exult in the childlike joy of pure musical creativity. He represents an attitude that encourages healthy creative participation at all levels of sophistication and shuns dogmas that revere one school of composition at the expense of others. I am so pleased to see you again, Vincent.
I'm delighted to be here, David.
You know, in the last 3-4 years, your music has had, I believe, even a wider circulation than ever before. It's always been very much played and on the scene, so to speak. Do you feel that too?
Yes, I hear more and more of the music around. I do a lot of traveling. I go to universities, and some of the children are playing my music. And I've never written for children necessarily to write music, but some happens to be easier to play than others. Mm-hmm. And I've had a lot from the teenagers and the 8- and 9-year-olds too. But I've had a lot of my symphonies now are getting done around the country.
Well, the time has come, I think, for people who care about these matters to assess one of the largest outputs we have ever had. You are, to say the least, prolific. How does that happen, that one becomes prolific?
Well, by writing slowly.
That's great.
Yes, and some composers work 2 or 3 hours, a day. And I can work 18 hours. Last summer I was on a big work, and I worked almost 15 hours every day. Occasionally I do it over 24 hours a day. I overlap days.
So there's no sleep, you just move.
Yes, I move, and I rewrite all the time. And I don't wait for the rehearsals to change my work. I have rehearsed them in my mind, and I go over them, and I have overlapping works so that nobody can write all day long. But I do on works in their different stages. One work may be in the terrible, wonderful early stages. Another work may be in the refining stage. Another one may be in proofs. But I'm kind of at it. I like people, and this is the best way to be with people, to talk to people, is through my music, I feel.
Well, the creativity that goes on in your mind must be a constant thing, but never a bother, always a joy.
No, I don't know what it is to be between works, for instance. I've never done that.
There's never been composer's block.
No, I've had all kinds of problems within a piece, but I have overlapping works, so I always have nourishment. And I do have blocks within a work, but I have the nourishment of the other piece I'm working on, and come back to it, and occasionally it might be years.
Well, this is a
Later.
real glimpse, Vincent, of
Yeah.
of how a creative mind like yours works. Did it begin very early for you, this composing?
No, it wasn't until I guess I was about 2 that I got interested in it.
2 years old. That's a little late for you. I mean,
Well, it was serious because my parents respected music and the arts, but knew nothing about it and wouldn't let me have lessons until I was 5. You know. And,
so you're a late beginner.
right.
Yeah.
But I had a good start when I did begin. But the first place, when I was 2, we had a player piano, and my father, who worked in a bank somewhere, would come home. I'd wait for him to come home, and he'd play the player piano. And by the time I was 3, I devised some way with ropes to hang onto above the keyboard and pump those pedals.
Mm-hmm.
And I would hear excerpts from Puccini and Naila, Waltz of Dalí, all this. And I remember in some Nevet pieces. And
Over at Nevin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nevin.
And when I found Schumann later, I had something to go there with, because Nevin had used the tenor voice of the piano very often,
Yes.
in his way. Robert Schumann really did it. You know, if you think about all the composers for the piano, that tenor voice of the piano is Robert Schumann.
That's right.
And when I was 5, my parents, I convinced them I could read and write. In other words, I could write the alphabet, sent me to a school. And I guess the main reason they finally condescended to do this was that the president, this was the Combs Conservatory, quite an important school in those days. This is before Curtis.
In Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, before Curtis Institute.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a music ed kind of school. The president lived, we have stoops in Philadelphia, front steps, lived 3 doors down. So when I was 3 and 4, I talked to him, he'd pat me on the head, and he knew I was not about music. And I said I want my lessons. When I was 5, he decided to tell my mother to send me to the school. And then I started. And I started with piano and composition, harmony, whatever. That's all composition. I had some good teachers.
Vincent Persichetti is my guest, and really what you're telling me, Vincent, is that you were a little child mad about music from the beginning.
And I was not precocious. I just loved music. And I
Well,
worked at
it seeped in, and it's never stopped. I love the idea that you just compose constantly, but you also have had room for so much else. You are really one of the legendary teachers, by the way, at the
really?
Juilliard School, and you know it. I mean, you have been there for how long now?
I don't know, since 1947, whatever that is.
Well, you have taught then so many composers. I was recently speaking to Philip Glass, who said what an important thing happening in his life to have been able to work with you.
And we could discuss the values of the note G together in those days.
Uh-huh.
And Steve Reich was with me there, and Peter Schickli also at the same time.
At the same time. Well, you have had in the palm of your hand, so to speak, at least 2 generations of American composers.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I really have never heard anyone that ever studied with you ever say anything except, what a great man and how much I learned. Well, we're going to begin our musical segment, and we put together a little representative program.
We'll get to hear music today.
We're going to hear at this minute, 2 minutes and 42 seconds of one of your poems. Very recently, you had a pianist by the name of Geoffrey Jacob record your 12th piano sonata on Orion Records, and also 2 of your poems. We don't have time for the 1981 sonata. 12 sonatas, Vincent. You really do work.
Yes.
But we're going to hear the poem number 15. It's entitled, "And Hung Like Those Top Jewels of the Night," and it's taken from Twilight Revelations by Leone Adams.
Yeah, Leone Adams.
Yes. And it's one of your poems for piano, and it's a very famous set. I remember myself playing 3 or 4 of them 20 years ago. They've been around for a while.
Yeah, I premiered them, I guess, in '39, way back.
Really?
Yeah.
Let's hear, and this is a rather lush one of the poems.
It certainly is. Yeah.
This is a beauty, a
Geoffrey
real
Jacob
beautiful
will now
poem
play
by Persichetti.
the
Listen to the
15th
playing,
poem of
excellent.
Vincent Persichetti.
Isn't that pretty? That's it, Matt. That's the first segment of this CD. Persichetti, the man, was an electric teacher. He could absolutely sight read anything. He knew the standard literature. He knew Beethoven. He knew Liszt. He could just get up and play. As Stanley told me one day, came in at 9 in the morning. He just was exhausted, and someone said Mazeppa. He sat down and he played Liszt's Transcendental Etude, Mazeppa. He was a man of such unbelievable facility. So I'm so glad that he's being honored tonight. His great problem was smoking. He truly smoked himself to death. Just wouldn't stop. As a teacher, as you know, as we mentioned, he's taught Philip Glass and almost everyone of that era. And what a teacher, and what a human being, and how charming. I remember my first encounter with him. I mean, he was, when I went to Juilliard, he was a legend. And I said proudly, "Oh, Mr. Persichetti, I play 2 or 3 of your poems for piano," one of these we just heard. And he looked at me, he said with such a benevolence, "Oh, why don't you play them all?" Anyway, he was really wonderful. Now, on this show today, I call everything now a show. I don't like the idea of not competing with the big time, with rock and roll. We are a show too, but a better one. And the music is much better. If we are here in 300 years, the Chopin Preludes will continue to be played. The great critic Henry T. Fink, he was an American critic who wrote excellent books, not read anymore, but I know them all. And he said, listen to this, "If tears could be heard, Chopin's Preludes would sound like these tears." Not that there's no happy music in the Preludes, but there are so many elements of tragic romance in it that it's just extraordinary. We're going to hear Quynh Nguyen, who I remember very well in my piano literature classes many years ago. She still looks exactly the same, 18 years old, and you'll see that. But I used to call her, because I change everyone's name. It's just, since I can't remember necessarily the name, I will change the name, and then I remember it. So Quynh was never Quynh. For some reason, I couldn't get that. I always called her. I liked it very much. I told her, please change it. Quinlan. Quite a good name, Quinlan. Anyway, she'll be playing the 24 Preludes, and what can I say? I have for you something so splendid. We're going to hear 7 pianists play the first prelude, this extremely Bach-like, Bach in the sense of the voice leading and so forth. The 24 Preludes are inspired in one way or another by Chopin's extraordinary love for Bach. A good example would be, he's the first pianist that could play the whole thing any minute. And after a lesson with one of his countesses in Paris, she said, because the Well-Tempered Clavier did not appear until 1839, and she said, I hear that you play Bach Preludes and Fugues. And just like that, he sat down, think of it. And he played 14 Preludes and Fugues for this woman. Afterward, she said, not only did you play them magnificently, but you played them from heart. You didn't say from memory then, it was from heart, from the heart. And he said, Countess, one doesn't ever forget music like this. Think of what kind of talent that was. So we're going to listen to number 1, and I think that from this show I do announce the pianist. So we're ready to go, Matt. Little lower, little lower. Well, Chopin marks it agitato, and Lortat certainly plays it agitated. I didn't really like it,
French
but
pianist.
maybe you
Now, that
did.
was absolutely horrible.
Let's have Garrick Olson. It'll be more gentle.
Romantic passion. Seconds of genius. Thank you. Okay.
Olson was still agitated, but rounder and more lyrically passionate. Here is Tchaikovsky. Always wait for the unusual with him.
This will be better even. The opera is always in Chopin. One of the greatest pianists that ever lived.
Tchaikovsky hangs it in a puff of air. Ugarish is down to 30 seconds in her performance.
Nothing special.
She doesn't let the piece die down as slowly as the others. We go now from Ugarish to Cortot.
Fabulous.
From Cortot, we go to Claudio Arrau, and he goes all the way to 45 seconds. That's 15 seconds difference than the Ugarish, so let's hear how his blood moves in this. I happen to like it a lot. Let's go to Bolette.
Bolette.
And
Okay,
that
Matt.
was Bolette in the C major prelude, Opus 28, number 1. Well, I think we have our fill tonight of the C major prelude. An
Okay,
exquisite
so Matt,
tidbit.
that's all. And we'll hear Quynh play that. And what's interesting is we don't really
understand until we hear comparison how different every piece is. You owe it to yourself to win the lottery so you can buy 4,000 recordings of Chopin Preludes and listen to one an hour. And I think that philosophically, morally, and every other way that you will have a good life. And you won't go to war. The 24 Preludes, they don't have fugues, of course. The Romantics could not write fugues. They were basically not educated quite enough, except Mendelssohn. Schumann later on learned how. Chopin actually, as a student, wrote a pretty little fugue. But what is important to understand is that the concept of the motivic development of a fugue, and it just cannot be within the Romantic scheme of 19th century music. So it would not possible for Chopin to have ever written a fugue that could compare with the Preludes. Now let's just talk about for a second the fact that these are 24 of the greatest pieces of music ever composed. If I had to, and I hope I don't, and I don't think I will, if I had to save one cycle of perfection, I would save the Preludes, take it to my little desert island, which I bought yesterday, and I would play them every day. I've practiced them my whole life. I have never succeeded in playing one very well, and it doesn't matter because it keeps nourishing you. There is more thematic material in these 24 Preludes in 35 minutes than in thousands of symphonies. It's an incredible mastery. Now, this is also when you listen to them outside of the raindrop, which is 5 minutes, you will be hearing the first and greatest miniatures ever composed. In other words, what you just heard was 30 seconds of such amazing, passionate, and perfect writing. Every single possibility of emotion is in there. The next one will be a gloomy work, which was used to tremendous effect by Ingmar Bergman with Liv Ullmann in his film called Autumn Sonata. Get it? It's incredible to see the relationship between daughter who's studying this piece and Ingrid Bergman, who is a concert pianist. It's an amazing psychological sketch by the greatest of all filmmakers. At least that's my opinion, and what does my opinion really matter? All right, we have 1 minute for one question. I never have any more than one question. Who's the lucky person? You mean I've covered everything? Okay, say it fast and loud. Oh, we're all so shy. And you know, that is the truth. We are all so shy. It took me years to be able to actually go out and do what I'm doing. And so one day they said, I'll pay you for it, and I got less shy. Thank you so much.
That was David Dubal, ladies and gentlemen, always as informative as he is entertaining. The sense of humor, the knowledge, the fascination with the music that he's able to convey to the audience here at the Kaye Playhouse and around the world in our live webcast.
Exactly, and one of the interesting things about David Dubal is that he has met so many not only great pianists and performers, but composers, and he has had a chance to interview them throughout his career on the radio, and this is one of the great treats that we have with these pre-concert lectures that he has, because he's able to bring these, like today we heard his interview with Vincent Persichetti. I mean, so that was really very fascinating in wonderful ways. One of the things I'd like to say, basically, for those that either came in late or did not hear a lot of things, a few things about some of the pieces that you will hear on tonight's recital. The 24 Chopin Preludes obviously are a monument and monumental works, and the way they're written, they pay homage in many respects to Johann Sebastian Bach and his Well-Tempered Clavier, the two sets. The interesting comparison between the two works would be Bach basically was demonstrating the idea of tuning. And I know Magdalena will be talking a lot about tuning and harpsichord because of her recital tomorrow,
yes,
with the Goldberg variations and things like that. But the whole idea of well temperament and to demonstrate how you can go from one key to the next. And Bach went chromatically up and down. So the first one is in C major, second one in C minor, then he went to C sharp, and then C sharp minor, and then D, and so on. Chopin, on the other hand, went in the circle of fifths and doing major and the relative minor immediately. So you have number 1, which is in C major, then number 2 is in A minor, number 3 becomes in G major, and then E minor, and so on, and he goes all around the circle of fifths until he gets to 24, and there are 24 preludes that he will be dealing with. And it's a fascinating collection, and even though the pieces are sometimes played individually, they are all under one opus, and they are very much meant to be played in its entirety as a cycle. And as Mr. Dubal said, that some of them are as short as 30 seconds, and then some of them, like the longest, number 15, which is called Raindrop Prelude, probably the most popular of the preludes, is well over 5 minutes long. And you have a whole collection of everything together in this particular collection.
It is a wonderful thing to hear them all at once, as we will in just a few minutes, played beautifully by Quynh Nguyen, the faculty member here at Hunter College. Chopin reserves a different color for each key in which he composes each prelude, in a similar way that Bach does in his Well-Tempered Clavier. Again, coming back to the idea of Bach and tuning and the equal temperament, Bach was, for the first time, trying to prove to the world that one can play in any possible key on the keyboard. The previous tuning systems did not really allow playing in keys that had more than 3 sharps or flats. So this was a revolutionary idea, and Chopin surely pays an homage to the great Bach. The preludes were written while in Mallorca, which was a horrible time for the composer, freezing in a monastery in Valdemosa. This was during the time when he was in a relationship with Georges Sand. Rather stormy sort of a union. They were not welcome in any hotel just because they were simply not married. The times were very different, and Chopin did not have a great time. He was supposed to go there in order to recuperate a little bit from his cough, which later turned into tuberculosis, which killed him eventually. However, the weather was really awful, and I think he came back more sick than
exactly.
he
I mean, this was a tragic trip in many respects, which was supposed to be a helpful trip, and that's why Georges Sand took him there with her children and everything else. But so that will be the first work on the program. Then, of course, we have Geoffrey Burleson playing some works of Saens, which he also has recorded, and he's a very big proponent of those. And it's called Album, Opus 72. Interesting thing about Saens, and a lot of people don't know a lot of his piano works, except maybe the second piano concerto, which was really a big war horse by Arthur Rubinstein. He played it all over the world, and it's still beloved of many things. But many people might not know that Saens wrote 5 piano concertos. They're all very varied, and some of them have interesting titles like The Egyptian and other things. But he himself, Saens, was an incredible piano virtuoso, and he lived in a very great period of time in France where he was aware of, and he was friends with Debussy and Ravel, and he knew Fauré, and he knew Franck and others. But at the same time, he was well aware of Franz Liszt, and he knew a lot of things. So he a very eclectic composer, and he was in charge of the Paris Conservatory for many years. Of course, for symphonic favorite people and people that really know his symphonies, his Third Symphony, the Organ Symphony, probably became the most popular of works.
Was a big organist.
Exactly, he played a lot of organ.
In Paris, indeed.
Exactly. So again, that particular work has become such a staple and has been featured in numerous films and movies from heroic music that he was able to compose. So again, to hear and have a chance to hear his solo piano works, which are very, very rarely performed. This will be a very special opportunity to do that.
That's right. It gives me an opportunity to share a piece of trivia about which I'm not 100% sure which year this was, but I believe it is Saens himself who is the very first recording of piano music ever, and it comes from rather early 1800s. I'm going to probably have to ask David Dubal about this. I'm sure he will know exactly what I'm talking about. So you will hear by Geoffrey Burleson, the faculty member here at Hunter College, two selections from the album Opus 72, the Prelude and the Carillon, followed by the Scherzo from Les Pêcheurs de Perles. After that, you will hear Vincent Persichetti Sonata number 9, and it has 4 movements here: Moderato, Allegro Agilité, Larghetto, and Allegro Sostenuto. To close the program, both pianists will join forces on 2 pianos playing Lutoslawski's variations on a theme of Paganini, written in 1941 during World War II, where the composer was still living in Poland.
Wow. And again, the Paganini 24 Caprices are certainly a staple of violinist repertoire. It's opus 1 of Paganini, and the last of the Paganini Caprices, number 24, has literally captured imagination. As David said, I believe there are close to 55 different variations on that particular theme of different composers. And you have everything from Franz Liszt writing transcriptions with his Paganini etudes. You have Rachmaninoff, famous Rhapsody on the theme of Paganini, which uses that variations for piano and orchestra.
The so-called rack bag.
Exactly. Brahms himself tried a hand at Paganini variations and wrote not 1 but 2 books of variations, which are literally some of the most challenging works in pianist repertoire from Brahms that we have. And then many other composers, again, will use either snippets of the Paganini variations in their works throughout, again, like I said, Rachmaninoff, others. And this particular piece, the Lutoslawski variations, are very much in a 20th century, written in 1942, very interesting take on these particular variations of how the tonality changes and the virtuosity on the piano is really remarkable of what he's able to do with this particular piece. I'm very excited to also know that this particular piece, you will hear it on 2 pianos, but it's also possible to play this piece for piano and orchestra.
Yes.
So a lot of colors. Lutoslawski is a very colorful composer. He is a master orchestrator, very much in the style of Ravel and Debussy. He has incredible tonal palettes, and you will hear it from the pianos, but you can also imagine how a lot of these colors could be transferred to the orchestra. So it's very, very exciting to hear.
Certainly, yes. A great colorist, still a very much underestimated composer. We do encourage you to listen to his Concerto for Orchestra, which is truly a masterpiece. I'm also thinking about, speaking of homages, here Chopin is paying homage to Johann Sebastian Bach, and it is Lutoslawski in his 2 etudes from 1939 paying homage to Frédéric Chopin. And if you were to only hear the first quarter of the measure of the first of these 2 etudes, you would be absolutely sure you are hearing Chopin's Opus 10 number 1.
Wow.
Of course, after that, it takes a whole different turn into really heavily expanding the tonal language.
And basically what we're talking about is tonight's concert, but it's something that you can hear every night. As you can hear, varied repertoire by really renowned pianists playing all kinds of different things. And you will hear pianists like Alessio Bach's doing everything from some standard repertoire. He will be playing the Moonlight Sonata, and he will play Pictures in an Exhibition and other works. And then we have Geoffrey Swan, another great pianist, who will be doing great collections of Liszt works, and then, of course, some Beethoven as well. We have Victor Rosenbaum, who will be playing the last 3 Beethoven sonatas, Opus 109, 110, and 111. It is certainly quite a feat to hear pianists. And tomorrow, of course, Magdalena, you will be playing the incomparable Goldberg variations, and not only once, but twice on a harpsichord and a piano. And please all stay tuned at intermission time, when Magdalena will be interviewed by Jerome, the director of the International Keyboard Institute and Festival, and they will be discussing at great length this particular piece and all the things about it. And we wish you all the best for tomorrow's performance.
Thank you. I have been practicing like a madman, and indeed it is a whole separate process of practicing each Goldberg variation sets on each instrument, and it'll be my pleasure to tell you about this a little bit more in the intermission. While we have a few more seconds, I will just tell you about a beautiful instrument that will be on the stage of the Kaye Playhouse tomorrow. It is a gorgeous Flemish double harpsichord, double meaning it has two manuals, and this is how Bach conceived his Goldberg variations for two manuals. It is beautifully decorated, and it will be coming from the Zuckerman Harpsichords International from Connecticut. It is a handmade, gorgeous instrument, and I encourage you very much to tune in tomorrow and see it and hear it in action. Let's now turn our attention to the stage where Quynh Nguyen is about to present 24 Preludes of Frédéric Chopin.
Welcome to the Kaye Playhouse at Hunter College. We would like to take a moment to remind you that the taking of photographs and the use of recording devices are strictly prohibited. In addition, please be sure that your cellular telephones and electronic pagers are turned off at this time. Any use of these devices inside the theater is prohibited by the City of New York. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jerome Rose, and I'm the artistic director of the International Keyboard Institute and Festival. We are now in intermission of the concert of Quynh Nguyen and Geoffrey Burleson. We've just heard a wonderful performance of the Chopin Preludes, and you can hear how the excitement in the background of what a great success this concert has already been. And we have already a second half to come. But I have with me this evening Magdalena Baczewska, who is very active in the field of music. She is both a harpsichordist and a pianist on the faculty of Columbia University, and someone I've known for many, many years. She was my former student, and I am delighted to have her here this evening to talk to you. Good evening, Magdalena.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Rose, for having me here. In fact, I must tell you all that it is Mr. Rose who is the person responsible for me sitting here and for me coming to New York 18 years ago to study with him at the Mannes College.
Well, one of the great things that you're doing tomorrow night, and this is one of the reasons why we're even talking about this, is you are playing the Goldberg Variations, both on the harpsichord and on the piano. Why don't you tell us how that came about?
Well, first of all, it was your idea. Secondly, a few years ago, when I was still your student, you were the one to actually tell me about a concert that took place in October 1977. It played at Carnegie Hall by Rosalind Turek on the 40th anniversary of her all Bach recitals at Carnegie Hall. And in that concert, she performed the Goldberg Variations first on the harpsichord and then on the piano. And I thought, Mr. Rose, when I grow up, I'd like to be able to do that. I said it was an amazing accomplishment. And I was very thrilled when you called me a few months ago and said you will be the one reproducing that experience at IKIF this year.
Well, it's even more extraordinary for someone like Rosalind Turek, and indeed yourself, because she was a very trained pianist. She had played Brahms concerti with major orchestra, Beethoven. She played the entire piano repertoire. And she also, of course, was a great Bach specialist, both on the piano and on the harpsichord. And you, coming from Poland, with the name of Baczewska, you know, you come in the tradition, perhaps not in the tradition, but the greatest harpsichordist of the time was, of course, Wanda Landowska. And, of course, now we have you making this tradition happen as well. Tell me now about the Goldberg Variations, because you'll be performing it tonight, or tomorrow night, I should say.
Yes, I hope it's not tonight.
Not tonight.
Well, Wanda Landowska, you mentioned her. She's a perfect example of the grande dame, larger than life, and a personality who created a style of her own, a performance practice of her own, before the entire historically informed performance practice trend was even popular. She had the Pleyel Piano Company create an instrument for her, a huge, powerful harpsichord that she brought with her all around the world. She had really turned the world's attention to the music of Bach and to the issue of performance practice. Now, Rosalind Turek, another wonderful lady, she could be really credited for bringing the eyes of the world, of the piano world, onto the music of J.S. Bach. There is an interesting anecdote about her not winning the Naumburg competition because the jurors apparently have decided who could possibly make a career playing Bach's music. And this is exactly what she ended up doing. And she's credited for saying that Bach is not the beginning of the piano music as we know it today, but he is rather a pinnacle of music that has been written to date. And as I'm trying to remember which biography that was, it was perhaps Einstein's, who writes so beautifully about Bach's music as a prism towards which all the music of the past tends and yet sheds the light on the rest of the music.
This is absolutely true, because one of the greatest Bach players of his time was none other than Frédéric Chopin. And I, as a pianist, and of course everyone in the world, has often wondered, how did Bach play Chopin? Or how did Chopin play Bach, for that matter? But in some ways I misquoted myself, but at the same time, one leads into the other. How does playing the harpsichord allow you to have knowledge of the piano if you're playing the works of Bach? And conversely, how does the knowledge of the piano playing the harpsichord allow you to play these works? Because there are different techniques, totally different instruments, and of course you will be having those problems, or at least having a resolution of all these ideas tomorrow night when you perform this work. Tell me a little bit about how you approach this.
Certainly, you know, Chopin, of course, as I said before the concert, was known to require all his students, of whom he had many, to prepare and to learn the preludes and fugues of J.S. Bach. So that was their daily bread, as it is our daily bread today. We know that Bach was very fond of the clavichord, which is an instrument in a way close to the piano, for its capability of dynamic gradation. So he was not a stranger to music that sings, that produces crescendo and diminuendo.
Well, when you mentioned the clavichord, yes, you can also do vibrato on the key, which is a phenomenon which is quite extraordinary as well.
Absolutely. As long as the tangent is holding the string, you can produce a vibrato. And we do know for a fact that Bach was very fond of the clavichord. We also know that in the 1740s, as the Goldberg variations were being written, Bach was exposed to the new model of Gottfried Zilberkant's forte piano, which is based on the earlier models of Bartolomeo Cristofori's pianos from the early 1700s. He wasn't so fond of the instruments at the beginning, but we know that several years later he actually came to terms with the latest developments and liked the idea of producing the dynamic gradations. How did Chopin play Bach? That's a really interesting question. We will never know the answer. But I'll tell you this, that when Felix Mendelssohn discovered by accident the score of Bach's St. Matthew Passion, that was the year of 1829, after exactly 100 years after the piece was written, he decided to perform it, and because he was missing certain instruments such as viola d'amore, he substituted it with others, and there is a recording that exists of that version that Mendelssohn came up with. So the music was certainly performed the way that was possible at the time on the instruments that they had, and that of course led to this very romanticized playing and a school of thought.
One of the things I'm so convinced of, and I see it confirmed in the finest performances of the works of Bach, is he was one of the great writers for the human voice. And absolutely, I feel very strongly that the harpsichord is an instrument that has to be sung. You have to be able to sing however you can on this instrument. And how do you execute that with your abilities, with all the stops, all the nuances, all the ornaments that are, of course, written into the Goldberg variations? This is a task
That's a very good question. Yes, and I still consider myself a student of this art. You know, and I was growing up in Poland. The general opinion was that the bad pianists went to study the harpsichord, and I think there's nothing more harmful in that. The harpsichord is an instrument that sings. It's extremely colorful. The instrument that I will be playing tomorrow night, the Flemish double harpsichord, has 3 sets of strings. 2 of them are 8 feet long and 1 of them is 4 feet long. And you will see me sort of switching gears in between these combinations of strings. Now, as far as making the instrument sing, you cannot produce dynamic gradations, so you have to use articulation, which is the way of timing in between the notes. And that is a very difficult thing to do for somebody who is used to playing the piano. Of course, the action of the instrument is much lighter as well. So if you can imagine playing everything in pianissimo, and if you try to go to put any more weight on the key, all you will hear is an ugly thump.
You choke the instrument.
Exactly.
Of course. You can't
exactly.
choke it, yes.
Yet it does sing, and we do know that, yes, as you said, Bach was a great writer of the vocal music.
So how do you play a performance of one of the greatest masterpieces ever written for the keyboard on the harpsichord? And how do you take a vacation between intermission to sort of set your mind to playing a piano just minutes after this challenging performance on a harpsichord. How do you do that?
That will be one of the biggest challenges of tomorrow night. I will be engaging a totally different set of muscles to play the piano after the intermission. But the instrument itself speaks to me, and the aesthetics that it requires of me are certainly very, very different. So within the style that that I'm sticking to, there are differences. For example, if you will hear my one of my favorite variations, number 7, which is written as a gigue on a harpsichord, I will make a beautiful, hopefully, Siciliana out of it on the piano, very delicately played. Of course,
so in other words, you will transcribe from the harpsichord this masterpiece written for the harpsichord. You will transcribe it to make a piano be a real piano.
Exactly. I will not be trying to make any compromises, as I tried to do in my 2008 recording of the piece, where I was playing the piano, constantly reminding the listener that, yes, the piece had been written for the harpsichord. Here I have the freedom of playing it completely differently and really exploring the dynamic gradations and the singing line, of which Bach was so aware, having been a student of the art of rhetoric and the convincing speech, of course, having written a lot of beautiful vocal music, in really conveying the text, really the whole story being about conveying the words of the Bible to the believers, to the congregation.
Well, we have to ask the obvious question: where does Glenn Gould's performance of this masterpiece fit into all the things that you're talking about?
Well, Glenn Gould was absolutely an inspiration, and the first recording I have ever heard of the piece, and I always have a very important role in my life and in my heart. He was a visionary, truly, and both of the versions, the 55 and the 81 of his Goldberg variations, are important staples of the recording repertoire. I think he set a precedent. He really brought those variations to the larger public.
Well, I remember it caused a sensation when it first came out, and I had the pleasure of hearing him in Carnegie Hall play it. The audience absolutely adored him, and they adored this piece, and it has become one of the staples of not only the harpsichord repertoire, but certainly the piano repertoire. So many great pianists have recorded this piece, and certainly you have recorded it yourself. I truly look forward to this performance that you are giving tomorrow, because I think it will be very exciting and educational, as we are a keyboard institute, to hear how it was originally written for the harpsichord and how so many pianists today are playing it on the piano, of course. So we thank Johann Sebastian Bach. We thank Count Kaiserling, and
who apparently commissioned
Johann
the variations.
Gottlieb Goldberg for creating this great masterpiece. I'm hoping that it will be marvelous, and we look forward. Thank you so much, Magdalena, for being with us.
Thank you for having me.